Alright guys, so in the last video what we did is we made our own custom interactive prompt that could take two simple commands. You could either list all the connections, and once you find a connection we're going to have the user write like select 0 or select 10, whatever the ID number is. Ugh, whooping cough. And another thing I want to point out is I accidentally wrote if equals list, and it needs to be if command equals list, because this is whatever they typed in. And we're just testing, did they type in list or did they try to select something? So remember to fix that. And now we need to build this function, list connections. So all this function does is I'll just write displays all current connections. So whenever a computer connects to your server, it'll list it right here. Now for the results, actually let me go ahead and write define list connections. All right. So the results is just the final thing that we're going to print out. So we'll loop through all of your connections, and remember they're all stored in here. And then for each one, we're gonna just save it to the string result. Now, what we normally do is something like this: for CONN in all connections, and then we can loop through them all. But what I actually want to do is, since we need to signify each connection with an ID number, we need a counter variable. So we can write like x equals 0 right here and increment it by 1 each time. But an easier way to do that is this. What we can do is we can actually enumerate all connections. Now what this does is it loops through just like before, but instead of just giving you this variable right here, we actually have that counter variable already built in. So the first time this loops, I is going to be equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And you can do this with any type of list. So that's a real, kind of like a, not advanced Python, but like medium Python. I don't know what, intermediate Python, I guess. All right. So now we have a bunch of connections in this list and we're going to loop through them all. But we just don't want to display them straight up to the user. We actually want to go through each connection and test to ensure that it's a valid connection before we display it. Because what we display to the user, we want to make sure that these are real connections. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try to send them a blank message. So this is only going to work if we actually have a connection. If we don't have a connection, maybe we had one before, but I don't know, they shut off their computer, then it's going to get an error and we won't add it to the list. So we're just going to send str in code, and we'll just send them a blank string right here. So this is going to do nothing to their computer. It's not going to like mess it up, and it basically has no real effect. The only thing is we're checking is if we can send a message to their computer from our server and we can get a response back, then that connection is valid. So that's all we're testing right there. And actually, let me add one more 0 to the buffer. All right, so except this is going to occur if we have a bad connection. So we just don't want to, skip over it. What we actually want to do is delete it from the list. So delete all connections. And what is it, or what is the number in the list? Well, it's actually just I right here. So I. So if it was the first time, it would be 0. If it was the second time, it would be 1. And that's how, not only can you have a unique ID number every time you loop through the list, but you can also signify the list item. Pretty cool. And you also want to do this for all addresses. So usually whatever you do as far as adding items or deleting items from these lists, you want to make sure that you do them together, since they're kind of linked in a way. Now, I actually want to write continue right here, because the next line, we're just going to be writing it to a string. So if we get a bad connection, we don't want to go on writing it to the results to display to the user. We just want to hop up to the next iteration. So the results is going to be, actually need to think about this. So string I. All right, so let me explain what I'm doing before. So basically, whenever we have a good connection, we want to display that to the user. So for each client that's connected, it's going to display their ID number, which is just some, like 0 through 10 probably, and then their IP address and port. So just some basic information about them, so we know who exactly we're connecting to. And then I just want to add like 3 blank lines from the ID number to the IP address, so it just looks a little bit prettier formatted. So now string all addresses I0. And this, remember, is the IP address. So from our list, all addresses, what item are we looking for? Well, whatever one we are currently looping through. And remember, 0 is the IP address and 1 is the port number. So we can actually print out the port number too. Actually, if we want to do this a real lazy way, just take all that and just do 1. All right, so it's going to give you the ID number of the connection, or the list number, it's the same thing, the IP address, the port number, and then we'll just print a new line after this. So new line. So each target is going to appear on a new line looking good. So now once we finally loop through all of our connections and save each valid one in results, we're just going to print out those results. However, I actually want to do this. Hold on a second. I think someone's in my house and it's freaking 1 in the morning, so. Nope, it was just my neighbor going to work. She is a nurse and she works at night, so whatever. All right, clients. And let me just print a new line after this. All right, so whenever they type list, it's just gonna say clients at the top, and then it's gonna butt it down to a new line, and then we're just gonna write all the results, which is information about each individual computer that is connected. So there you go. Whenever the user types in the word list, it's gonna call this function, which basically loops through all the connections that you have, prints out information about them, and since we have an ID number, this is the list item of the connection too. So then we can say, okay, select 0 or select 3. Select whatever computer that you want, and that's what we're going to be doing in the next tutorial. So I'll see you then.